What's up, everybody? After a crazy NFL Week 7, we're on to Week 8, continuing our Survivor Leagues. Let's get into the picks for this week's game. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to the page if you're using this information for your leagues, if you just like the channel in general, and you want to keep getting our other NFL content as well. So here are the 9 games that I've identified for this week that you're probably at least considering this week. Stark difference from last week, as there are plenty of games that are favored by more than 3 points, plenty of games that are favored by more than a touchdown, so a lot of different options to choose from, and it seemingly appears to be an easier Survivor week in Week 8. But of course, there's always strategy and deeper meaning in every week's pick. You're going to want to consult each team's schedule and seeing where you want to pick them later in the season, if at all, and so that's something you always want to consult. Starting, as we always do, with the teams you want to proceed with caution and think long and hard before you take this week. We're going to start with the Eagles at the Commanders. The Commanders played the Eagles hard in Philadelphia prior in this season. They ended up losing in overtime, but it was an incredibly close game. We even mentioned it then when it was in Philadelphia that was a proceed with caution game. It's certainly one in Washington, even though the spread is 6.5, even though the Commanders didn't look great last week. There's something to be said always against a divisional opponent, especially these two divisional opponents on the road. Doesn't take much looking back in the rearview mirror to realize that. You saw the Bills, who were favored by more than 6.5 against the Patriots, who looked abysmal all year long, go into Foxborough and lose. So home teams, divisional or away teams, divisional games are always a challenge and always red flags. This is certainly one of them, given how hard the Commanders have played the Eagles all season long and for the past few seasons, despite how dominant the Eagles have been. Another pick in the same vein as that are the Chiefs at the Broncos. It doesn't take much explanation here. Again, divisional game on the road. You're going to get the Chiefs in much better spots than this. Do you really want to lose your Survivor League because you picked them on the road against the divisional opponent? Probably not, especially not in a week where there are so many games that are favored by so much and more than a field goal here, even for some teams on the road. Just doesn't seem like the best spot for the Chiefs, again, given that they're playing a divisional opponent that they've already played once this year. Once you play a team one time and you see them again, you learn what they did well against you, you adjust. Sean Payne's a good coach for the Broncos. Obviously, he's no Andy Reid, but he's going to be ready to make adjustments this game. And I have a feeling this game is going to be closer than you might like if you're picking the Chiefs for Survivor. So I think it's best to just stay away. Again, one final time, divisional game on the road, definitely something you want to stay away from. Looking at the best pick this week, some might be surprised, but I'm going with the Dolphins at home against the Patriots. It's a week-by-week league, and I think the Vikings beating the 49ers really exemplifies that. Any team can win any given Sunday. I think that's what happened with the Patriots against the Bills. Now they're on the road facing a Dolphins team that just lost. They played pretty competitive against the Eagles, but they certainly are in a different league versus the Patriots. I would be surprised to see Mac Jones and the Patriots pull 2 rabbits out of their hat in back-to-back weeks, especially against a team like the Dolphins that is much more dimensional than the Bills' offense, can feed the ball to much more people than just one guy like Stephon Diggs. Yes, the offense predominantly runs through Tyreek Hill, but Jalen Waddle is an incredible number 2. It seems like with some of the run game that these guys have, the Dolphins can really spread the ball to anybody. I don't think the Patriots put up enough points, despite a good defensive performance last week against the Bills. Again, I don't think Lightning's going to strike twice here. I think the Dolphins are a good pick after a bounce-back loss, and the Patriots riding high against a Bills win. And the best value this week that I almost made the best pick. I was really tempted to do it. Despite how bad I talk about the Chargers normally, I think they are the best value and potentially even the best pick this week. The Chargers had 2 wins this season. They've looked very poor all season at 2-4, but they're at home under the lights on Sunday night. They got the Bears with their backup quarterback, D2 quarterback, Bagent, starting for them. He won a game against the Raiders here at home for the Bears, but he didn't look all that impressive to me. Completed 21 passes for just 160-something yards. So he's not really a lot of dink and dunk plays, not really stretching the ball downfield and stretching the defense. He's going to have to play some real football here against the Chargers under the lights, the whole nation watching him. pretty decent pass rush with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, possible Bears revenge game here. I think it's a really a good bounce back opportunity for the Chargers to win a game here again under the lights on Sunday Night Football. If the Bears were to win this game, they would have a better record than the Chargers, and that's just not an NFL that exists in my mind. So I really think that the Chargers are a good spot here. While I think they're one of the most poorly coached teams in football, I think they're way more talented than the Bears. Again, Bears riding high off a win. They really relied on that run game to control the ball with the Raiders. While the Chargers don't have that great of a run defense, number one, it's better than the Bears. And number two, sometimes stats don't tell the whole story. In situational games, again, that Vikings-Niners game, Niners had one of the best defenses in football, and Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense, without their number one receiver, went in or hosted them and put up the most amount of yards that defense has seen all year, losing their number one player. So sometimes teams are motivated to play a little bit harder than you might think. I think that's a situation the Chargers are in right now, and I think they're in a great spot to beat the Bears again at home Sunday Night Football. And if you take a look at that schedule, I'm looking at the Chargers line specifically here, looking for their home game out of conference schedule. They got Detroit, Baltimore, Buffalo, and that's it for the rest of the season. So you're not going to want any of that. Even their other home games, you got some tough division opponents like Kansas City, even Denver. Like, I don't trust the Chargers enough to really pick them against any divisional opponent and any worthwhile team. So I think this is the best chance, barring any injuries from any of their opponents, the best opportunity you can get for the Chargers. I guarantee they're not favored by 8.5 at a single other point on this schedule for the rest of the season. This is the best line you're going to get for them. And I think, again, for the final time, this is a perfect spot to pick the Chargers when they are desperate for a win, just as the Vikings were on Monday Night Football against the Niners. There's still some other good value here. Again, I think the Chargers are the best given their situation, but I do believe the Ravens are good value. You know, you really wouldn't want to take an away team, especially with how packed this slate is with potential survivor picks. If every other team on this list was at -3, then yeah, you'd love the Ravens on the road here and think it's great value. But there's just so much good value and good potential with all the other picks on the board. The Ravens pick on the road isn't as juicy as it otherwise would be. Still pretty good value here. You know, they're facing a Cardinals team that hasn't looked all that competitive the last few weeks. The Ravens just had a beat down the Lions, who many people think are potentially the third best team in the NFC. Maybe you can make the argument they're the second best after this week, but actually not after that loss. What a joke. But they're a solid team, maybe top 4 for sure in the NFC. The Ravens dismantled them. I think people are going to be riding high on the Ravens, so that's why I kind of devalue these guys a little bit as opposed to the Chargers pick. But the real value comes in the fact that there's not a ton of games for the Ravens for the rest of this season. Again, you're looking at specifically their home game out of conference schedule. Seattle, you know, they're looking pretty good at 4-2 and definitely a playoff team. So I know the Ravens won't be favored by 8.5 points there. Maybe with the Rams, they won't be favored by 8.5 points, but I like their matchup they have against the Rams. And then, you know, Miami. So maybe take them in Week 14. But again, I guarantee you're not going to get the Ravens at the spread they have now. That's what makes it a good value. The reason it's not the best value, number one, is because the Chargers, the same spread, have fewer games to pick for the rest of the season. But also because they're on the road, and that's also a little scary. But still, regardless, a good pick. So if you can't pick the Chargers and you don't want to pick the Dolphins or Bills, I think the Ravens are probably a good spot. This is probably your time to use them this year. Talking about the other picks, you know, I think people are going to be quick to sell on the Bills after losing the Patriots. I wouldn't say that. I think this is a prime time to buy the Bills, as they're kind of on a skid right now and almost derailing. But the Bucs, as you saw against the Falcons, really don't have much going for them on offense. Their really only option is throwing the 9 rounds to Mike Evans. You take that away, and this Bucs offense really struggles. Very one-dimensional. Solid defense, but not enough to sustain the Bills offense, even with how much they force feed Stephon Diggs. I was really encouraged with how much they got Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid in the offense. If they keep that rolling, this Bills defense starts spreading the ball out a little bit more. I think they'll start seeing some positive movement, especially in the win column. I think it starts this week against the Bucs. Another pick, Raiders Lions. I really love this -8 for the Lions, and I think I like it too much. The Raiders look god awful against the Bears, and I really think the Lions are much better than what they showed against the Ravens. I think they're kind of like the Dolphins in the way that they're going to beat down on teams that are beneath them, and they're not quite good enough to beat teams that are above them. I think that's what you saw for the Dolphins against Philly and the Bills, and what you saw with the Lions against. You can maybe make the argument the Seahawks, but certainly against the Ravens here. So I think it's a good spot for the Lions, but I identified them as having a lot of other picks later this season. So could be the time to take them. I think they should win this game. I like the line of -8 too much, I think, to recommend it more, because you never want to like your picks too much. That's when Vegas is tricking you. So you always got to keep an eye on that. Finally, last two picks, Cowboys, Rams. Cowboys off a bye, so I like them there. I like the defensive matchup they have with the Rams. Rams have a pretty poor defense throughout this season. It's got to be pretty poor if you're letting the Steelers beat you and put up 24 points. Cowboys, their offense has really not looked that good, but again, going up against a weak defense, the Rams offense is pretty strong, although they didn't show it against the Steelers that much. And I think this Cowboys defense is better than the Steelers. Doesn't always work 1-for-1 like that, but I think this is a good matchup for the Cowboys to get a win, another win under their belt, and take one step closer to competing with the Eagles for this NFC East title. It's a good game and a good matchup for the Cowboys here. But with such other great games this week, I'm not sure you take them. Same kind of thing with the Niners. I'd be really surprised if they lost 3 games in a row, despite how poor Brock Purdy looked in the fourth quarter against the Vikings. But this Niners team, especially when healthy, is really built to beat this Bengals. The Niners are a run it down your throat, control the line of scrimmage kind of team, and the Bengals are the opposite of control the line of scrimmage, especially on the offensive side. That O-line has struggled since Joe Burrow started his career with them. While I think the Niners defensive line is really good, they didn't seem to get too much pressure on the Niners, or on the Vikings, something they're definitely going to try to buck the trend against the Bengals. But it just seems like Niners can't lose 3 games in a row. Niners offensive line should be able to handle, Trey Hendrickson and this, I'd say, average Bills defensive front, the Bengals defensive front, and then the flip side, their defensive line and Nick Bosa should really dominate this Bengals offensive line, giving the Bengals not too much time to pass, especially if they get down early. I don't think it's a great spot to pick the Niners, given the fact that the Bengals, every single game are somewhat desperate, because this is a very, very tight AFC North. I'm looking at some of the records here. Pittsburgh's 4-2, Ravens are 5-2, and the Browns are 4-2. The Bengals are still 3-3 in the last in the division, so they're pretty desperate still if they want to make this playoffs. So it's probably best to avoid the 49ers here, even for those saying, well, there's no way they lose 3 in a row. Probably not, but a desperate Joe Burrow and Bengals team is not one you want to mess with, so probably best to stay away from the Niners here as well. But that is the video. Best of luck in Week 8. Just as a quick recap, I think that the Dolphins, probably the best pick here, just given the spread. I think they're a much more dynamic team than the Patriots, who, kind of had a desperation win there in Week 7. Best value, I think the team to have the desperation win this week that is facing a much weaker team is the Chargers here. Again, at home, Sunday Night Football. You saw with the Vikings firsthand what can happen when a desperate team is on national television playing a better opponent. The Chargers are playing a lesser opponent, a D2 quarterback in his second career start. Great time for Justin Herbert and the Chargers to get back on track and try to make a push for this wild card spot in the playoff. I think it's really a good opportunity for your pick and survivor and a great value. And I wish you all the best luck and hope to see you again in Week 9.